I would say overall, this movie, like you said, does touch on certain things that I think are really important. And for example, for me, the things that I did like where he talked about the sustainability of groundwater reuse, and considering how that's something that we are much more knowledgeable of just due to the exposure of it. We've read a lot of material related to these subjects. We are aware that these are things that do need to, be considered, because the rate at which we're taking out water from our groundwater resources is greater than the rate at which they're being replenished. And right now, it's not a big deal, but slowly, at a certain point, the whole question of sustainability, it will become kind of slapping our face.
Yeah.
So I think that those things are pretty important. But when it comes to the solutions, like, I always try to look at when we look dealing with problems. All right, when we have problems, what are the solutions that can be, are being put forward as well? Because it's easy to just put forward a bunch of issues, a bunch of problems, but if you have real character, then you need to also simultaneously come up with some semblance of solutions. And maybe that's
Absolutely.
not your job. Okay, I get it. Maybe you're just a journalist, right? But at least put it out that is the case, because when it comes to the solution, the ultimate solution that is being proposed by this documentary, I think is deeply flawed, extremely flawed. Even though I agree with some of the points that it makes in terms of the environmental sustainability that's required for future generations, yes, but in terms of the solution that's being proposed, it's essentially population control, limiting the number of people that are born. So essentially, if you're a responsible and moral individual, then you shouldn't have kids. Well, you know what? If that's your thought, then by all means, do not procreate. Do not pass your genes to future generations. And by all means, we'll have less people like you. So thank you. That's a great solution for people like you.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, the way that I see it is that the more people that we have that are living wealthy, then the more people that we have that are contributing their brain power to these solutions. And that's a real thing that people need to consider. So that's the ultimate argument for me when it comes to looking at, well, okay, we need population control, we need less people, less people. Well, when you also consider it from the opposite point of view, when you have more people but that are enriched, right? It's been shown that after a certain point of GDP, once you have a certain amount of money that you're making, you're no longer concerned about meeting your basic demands, right? It's like that we all know that pyramid of basic demands that any individual needs, where first it's your shelter, food, water, and then once you have those basic things met, then it comes to those deeper psychological needs: love, relationships, community, fulfillment, passion, those types of things. And those things occur when we have more money, when we have higher GDP. So to me, it's not necessarily limiting the number of people, but it's encouraging more people and then making them richer, helping them to get richer so that they can contribute to solving the problem. But again, if you were to point out to this guy, if you were to say that to this guy, okay, how do we make people richer? Okay, well, we use the markets, the greatest driver of economic wealth in modern history, or that we know of. And he would point out, this individual, Gibbs and Michael Moore, because he's co-signed it, are saying capitalism would not lead to that. Capitalism has actually been the detriment of the green movement. Capitalism has led to greenwashing. Good point. That is a great point. I definitely agree that greenwashing is a thing, and we need to be mindful of that, because freaking large corporations, they see a movement, they see a wave, and what they'll do is they'll hop onto it and, oh, we have green products, this, but it's like when you look into it, it's not green, quote unquote, at all.
Yeah.
By any metric or definition except some arbitrary one that they chose to use. So that is definitely a thing. But again, when it comes to capitalism as the greatest driver of wealth, that is undeniable. And to quote this movie, it literally said, capitalism is a cancer. Capitalism is a cancer on the planet. So when you're looking at it from that point of view, then it's like, it's tough to like really have a discussion. So I'm going to touch on one of the things that you pointed out, even when it comes to the mining, right? The shots of the mining. It's, he's criticizing, for example, Tesla electric vehicles. Oh, well, you know what? You have to mine for the raw minerals in order to create the batteries that those electric cars run on. True. 100% true. Mm-hmm. You know what else requires that? How about the camera that you use in order to shoot this movie? How about the computer that you use in order to produce this movie? How about you take a second and pause and consider that you being able to shoot this movie, produce this movie, has originated from a mining process. You ignorant fool. Okay? So if you wanted to not produce a movie, okay, yeah. How do I even say this? It's like you're criticizing literally the thing that helped you produce the movie. Like you're shouting at the people that helped you make your movie. Like, come on, man. Like really?
Well, it goes back. It almost goes right back to that first question, though. The first question is can we solve the problems of an industrialized civilization with the tools of an industrial civilization? But in this case, it's like, can we warn people about the problems of industrial civilization without using the tools that are generated by it? There's all these hypocrisies there. But what I wanted to bring up there was you started off by saying how important it was to provide solutions. But even if you can't provide solutions, and maybe the rule of journalists and documentarians is not to do the solutions part. Okay, and maybe they didn't want to go and interview the experts who might have solutions. Fair enough. I think that the biggest issue I had with this film was they didn't even do a good job at fairly defining the problems. They chose to, create this, problem scenario based on cherry-picked items, and then didn't even give it the time of day to do the research on them to put them in a fair light.